So the first step to change an ellipse from general to standard form is the same as it was for parabolas. You're going to move the constant to the other side and group the x's and y's together. So that 9x squared and minus 36x will go together. And then the 16y squared and negative 96y will go together. And then this negative 396, we're going to move it to the other side, and so that'll make it a positive 396. Okay, so that's just like when we were doing parabolas. You group the x's, group the y's, move the constant to the right side. Now, this is different. With parabolas, the x squared was just an x squared. There was no number beside it. And the y squared was just a 1y squared. There was no number beside it. So for this, we're going to have to factor out those numbers. So just watch, and then I'll give you time to write it down. I'm going to factor out a 9. Factoring out a 9 basically means you're dividing a 9. What's 9x squared divided by 9? X squared. And what's negative 36x divided by 9? Negative 4x. So see how I factored the 9 out and it left x squared minus 4x? And then I'm going to do the same thing with that 16. I'm going to factor it out. Okay, so when I pull a 16 out, 16y squared divided by 16 is y squared. And then negative 96y divided by 16 is negative 6y. Okay, so that's step 2. Factor out the number with the x squared and the number with the y squared. We didn't have to do that with parabolas because they never had a number other than 1. Okay, the third step is to complete the square. So this is when you start drawing in the blanks. So it'll be 9, and then parenthesis x squared minus 4x plus a blank. And then plus 16 times y squared minus 6y plus a blank. And then just like always, since we added 2 blanks on this side of the equation, we will add 2 blanks on this side of the equation. Okay, who remembers how we fill in the blank? Right, b over 2 squared. So for the x's, what's the b value in this x trinomial? Negative 4. Negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2, but negative 2 squared is 4. Okay, now pay attention, this is different. Remember, with parabolas, there was nothing out here factored out, so we would have just simply added 4 to this side. But with ellipses, you now have to multiply that 4 by the 9, and that will be 36 over here. Okay, so now let's do the y trinomial. What's the b for the y trinomial? Negative 6 divided by 2, negative 3, and negative 3 squared is 9. And normally we would just add 9 over there, but you have to multiply it by the factored out number. What's 9 times 16? 144. Okay, so that's different than when we did it with parabolas. You have to multiply your space, your blank space numbers by the factored out numbers when you add them over here. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to do the bubble method, just like we did with parabolas. We're going to find the 2 factors that will make this, and then we're going to find the 2 factors that will make this trinomial, and over here we're just going to add these up. What did those add up to be? 576, right. Okay, now let's talk about this. Obviously, to get an x squared, we need an x times x. What are 2 numbers, and they have to be the same, remember, that multiply to 4 and add to negative 4? Negative 2 and negative 2. Because negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4, but when you add a negative 2 and a negative 2, you get a negative 4. What are the numbers that multiply to 9 and add to negative 6? Negative 3 and negative 3. And remember, guys, the reason they always have to match is because in the very next step, aren't you just going to write that x minus 2 once and square it? And then same thing for the y minus 3's, write it once and square it. And remember to continue bringing down the factored out 9 and the factored out 16. Okay, I'll give you a second to get caught up. This is page 23. Okay, now remember, our goal is to get get this equation in standard form. Okay, pay attention. Our goal is to get this equation in standard form. And aren't those equations on the whiteboard standard form of an ellipse? So it's getting closer to that, right? But all equations of ellipses equal what at the end? 1. Well, look. Can't I divide this by 576? And 576 over 576 will equal 1? Okay, but what that means is you have to divide this by 576 and this by 576. Okay, because whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. Equations have to be balanced. So now, in your calculator, reduce 9 over 576. Reduce 9 over 576. 1 over 64. Okay, so, and then just write the x minus 2 squared beside it. Now reduce the 16 over 576. And then we'll write the y minus cube squared beside it. 1 over 36. Okay, but now look, is there really any need to write those 1's out here? No, so couldn't I just write x minus 2 squared in the numerator? I don't have to write the 1 over 64, and then plus y minus 3 squared in the numerator over 36, and then equals 1. And isn't that now the equation of ellipse in standard form? Can't we now easily identify the h, the k, the a, and the b? Okay, what is the h and k? 2, 3. Remember, these negatives are part of the formula. So if it's still just a minus 2 and a minus 3, that means you really were plugging in a positive 2 and a positive 3. A is always bigger, so wouldn't A have come from this number? But before it was squared, it would have been a 8. And so B would have been a 6. So do you see why we have to take it from general to standard form so that we're able to identify all of the things we need to? Okay, so go ahead and get caught up and then turn to page 24 and we're going to try one more. So it's similar to changing a parabola from general to standard, but there are a few extra steps. Okay, here we go. What's step 1? Shh. And in the same step, can we go ahead and group the x's and y's? So 4x squared minus 8x plus 9y squared minus 54y equals the 49 when it moves over will become negative. Now remember, with parabolas, at this point we were ready to add in the blanks and fill them in. But with ellipses, we have this number out in front. So we have to factor it out. So you're going to factor out a 4 and you're going to factor out a 9. Okay, when you factor 4 out of 4x squared minus 8x, what's left? Right. All you're doing is undistributing it. You're taking the 4 out. So the way you can check it is 4 times x squared is 4x squared. 4 times negative 2x is negative 8x. Okay, so to undistribute the 9, we'll leave a y. And then check it. 9 times y squared is 9y squared. 9 times negative 6y is negative 54y. Now that we've factored that out, now we're ready to add in the blanks for each of the trinomials. So x squared minus 2x plus blank. And then we're ready to add it in over there. Remember to continue bringing down your factored out number. Y squared minus 6y plus blank equals negative 49. And then 2 blanks over there. Okay, how is it that we fill in our blanks? Right, so for the x trinomial, what is the b value of it? Negative 2 divided by 2, negative 1, and negative 1 squared, positive 1. But remember, we don't add a 1 over here, we add a 4. You have to multiply it by the factored out number. Okay, so what's the b value of the y's? Negative 6 divided by 2 is, negative 3 squared is 9, but 9 times 9 means you add 81 over here. Okay, so now we're going to bubble method each trinomial by looking for the two numbers that multiply to get the last number and add to get the middle number. And then on the right side, we're just going to total those up. So x and x, what numbers multiply to 1 and add to -2? -1 and -1. Okay, because if you want them to add up to a -2, they both got to be negative. And then what numbers multiply to 9 and add to -6? Y minus 3 and y minus 3. And then on the right side, what do those total up to be? 36. Okay, so now the whole reason that those had to match is because we're just going to write it once and square it. And so now it's getting closer to looking like the equation of an ellipse, but the equation of ellipse always equals what? 1. So to make that a 1, you divide it by 36, because 36 divided by 36 is 1. You divide this by 36 and this by 36. So what is 4 over 36? Isn't that 1 over 9? And what's 9 over 36? Okay, so wouldn't that just end up becoming, you don't need to write the 1 on top, so x minus 1 squared over 9, and then plus y minus 3 squared over 4. And now doesn't it look like the equation of an ellipse? Does anybody know just by looking at it if it's horizontal or vertical? How do you know? The bigger number's under the x, which means it's horizontal. What is the h and the k? 1, 3. What's the a value? 3, because remember that was squared, so it would have been 3 squared. And what's the b value? 2. We will continue working on these tomorrow. We're not learning anything new. Thursday we will be reviewing. Friday you'll be reviewing on your own. And Monday is the test.